said, I'm Anisa Heming. I'm with the Center for Green Schools. We're at the U.S. Green Building Council, which is a nonprofit. And I was really excited to talk to Chris about different themes you guys had going on this year. I love this event. I love meeting everybody. And climate resilience came up, and it's something we've been focusing a lot on with the school districts that we work with. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that today. So this is who we are. We are a team within the U.S. Green Building Council. We work with school districts all around the country, about 250 districts, 700 or so individuals. And we provide free support and training for school districts staff who are interested in or in charge of sustainability, environmental health, energy, that sort of thing. So if anybody has staff members that are working on sustainability, we would love to work with them and get them integrated into our peer networks. Everything we do for school districts is free. All right, so I want to start with a story. You just heard a story about the importance of climate resilience planning. This is a really cool example. It's from Discovery Elementary in Arlington, Virginia. And Discovery is a net zero energy school. And on their first day of school, the principal was, like running around like you do on the first day of school, trying to welcome new students and make parents feel comfortable and get everything set up. And she gets back to her desk and she has 50 text messages from her local principal's text chain, and they're all saying, "What are you going to do? Are you sending kids home? How are you going to handle this? First day of school, power outage for the first 2 hours or so of school." And she had not noticed. She had not noticed. None of her teachers had noticed. She had not noticed because they hadn't, been using her smart boards and stuff. But they have such a great daylighting, such a great envelope. It was hot outside, but they weren't, the temperature was staying steady in the school. It's everything we want out of a school to just sort of be able to operate without hiccup and just keep going. This is the story of resilience in our schools. This is what we want out of our community schools. Just, be able to provide. So what I'm going to talk about is trying to get to the point where you are really facing the risks associated with climate change in your schools and trying to figure out strategies to address those moving forward. So this presentation does not require you to believe in climate change. If you're one of the 10% of people that don't think it's real, this is not the point, not the point. You will still have wildfires, flooding, increased heat, all the things that come with climate change. So we're gonna plan for it. What we do know is that natural hazards do disrupt school. They would disrupt school for a lot of kids around the country. And so trying to build for that helps us keep school open for our kids. There are also longer term and sort of slower things to deal with when it comes to resilience. One of those is our increased cooling degree days, increased extreme heat. So I looked this up for Phoenix. You can find this at where is this? Climate Central. Yeah. So this is the number of degrees over 65 degrees combined for this period of time at the top. So this is true across the country. We're seeing increased extreme heat days. And we have not really designed for this across the country. So this is from a presentation. We had a webcast recently on designing for extreme heat. And this came from one of the presenters from UT Austin, and he was examining schoolyards and what was happening in schoolyards. So you can see sort of this hot spot of the play yard and then this cooling spot with the trees. But the difference is really marked there in the how hot these areas are for our kids. And it's not just that it's uncomfortable and it's dangerous in some cases for vulnerable populations. It's also that students just don't move around when they're hot. So we have this drop off in physical activity as well. So you're letting kids out, get steam, blow off steam, move around, and they don't want to do it when it's this hot, right? So it's also not good for them. in their mental health and well-being. So we know that a lot of kids are in areas with heat islands. We know that it actually affects academic performance for students to be in areas that are increased heat. So there was one study that showed that without air conditioning, a 1 degree higher school year reduced that year's learning by 1%. So just extrapolate that up. So what would be the ideal is for school districts to not create a climate resilience plan. That is, we don't want that, because that's not integrated with what you're doing already. What the idea is to take the planning that you're already doing and just put a different lens on it related to climate resilience. So the reason I know that this is really like leading edge stuff. So the districts that we work with that are doing climate action planning, like reducing emissions and going for net zero energy schools and like really taking that on, most of them have not even thought about climate risk yet. So this is like another side of the coin when it comes to climate action, like thinking about climate change. This is not being taken on by a lot of school districts, but it is this essential piece to protect ourselves moving forward and our systems moving forward. So if you have an emergency management plan, like thinking about how climate risk affects that, or your facilities master plan, have you thought about the areas of your district that are prone to these climate-driven risks, and how do you integrate that? So I'll give you a couple of examples. This is from a firm that is called Climate First, but there's a couple of firms that do this. So they take like your specific site and they give you like a whole slew of risk factors related to that site. And then, and this is key, they talk about which parts of your asset are affected by that particular risk, and how do you build that into your asset planning. So if you are in an area with extreme heat, how is that going to affect the longevity of your roof? And then how do you reduce the years that you project your roof is going to last based on that climate risk? So that's how specific we should be getting about climate resilience risk. Like, what are the risks on this site, and how do I prepare for them, and how do I build them into the capital plan for my system? So this is a free tool from FEMA, the National Risk Index. And you can find this online. You just Google FEMA National Risk Index. So this is one way of figuring out the risk factors and sort of how strong those risk factors are in your area. So I did this for Phoenix. So Phoenix, pretty low overall risk, which is good. So you can zoom in, and you can get this by census tract, or you can get this by county. And then you can filter for different risks. So here is the wildfire risk around Phoenix, for instance. So if you wanted to do this for school sites, you could go in and sort of look at what are the things that I might not be thinking about related to my school sites that I should be planning for in our capital planning. So here are some examples from a briefing paper that I'll show you later, but a briefing paper that we have for climate resilience planning. And these are just a few things that you could think about integrating into these different types of plans that you might already have at your district. So emergency management, you can be looking at a bigger focus on power outages and what you can expect in the future for additional days out of power, for instance. You could look at your facilities master plan and analyzing the financial and social impacts of some different types of solutions for the future in your facilities. You can plan your life cycles like we were talking about earlier. And then for districts that have a sustainability plan, there are additional things that you'd want to think about, because usually those address climate mitigation. So they're, energy efficiency, for instance. And so this would add to it. How might we get off the grid solutions? How would we do some of that, the stuff that is going on at Lake Oswego, which is incredible work. And then, also how do we integrate climate risk into our educational program? So how do we prepare our students to be effective professionals in a world that is affected by climate change? And if you're wondering if this is worth it, generally, yes, the mitigating against these risks are going to save money in the long term instead of spending money on getting back on your feet after a disaster has hit. So you can see after the ice storm and extreme heat, and what else was in your, yeah, your wildfires and your, yeah, right? So like it's the, instead of trying to pick up the district's facilities after those things, if you're prepared for them ahead of time, obviously you're going to be in a better situation financially. And also, like, the federal government is also recognizing this. So there's FEMA hazard mitigation grants that are specifically for doing this type of work. So instead of FEMA giving you money after a disaster hits, they are also now giving money for doing mitigation work and sort of protective work for systems like school systems. So that there's a recognition on the federal level that this is also something that saves money in the long run. I wanted to tell another story to kind of close this out here, actually. So there's this effort that has been going on in Milwaukee. Is anybody here from Milwaukee? I didn't look. Milwaukee. Different, yes. But you are okay, all right. Well, you might know this story then. You might know this story. All right, so Milwaukee Public Schools had a couple of flooding incidents that were really disturbing. One of them was at this early childhood center where they had a really large storm, and the basement, which actually has classrooms in it, started flooding, and they had to evacuate all these tiny children, right? These early childhood pre-Kers. And it really scared, the parents and everyone else. And so they started assessing their sites for flood risk. And they figured out that 40% of their sites are at severe or moderate risk for flooding, for storm-driven flooding. And so obviously they were worried about that. And so they got a coalition together of the Department of Public Works, the Sewage and Water Board, and then there was this like local foundation that did stuff related to Lake Michigan. And they got together and collected funding and have now done 30 schoolyards with storm mitigation measures. So this is STARMS, and this is the new schoolyard. So they introduced pervious paving, they have underground storage for water, they have bioswales to retain it on the surface. And then they also are, you can see with the illustration, they're also sort of, teaching kids about the hydrology of their city through these sort of illustrative slides and boats and things. But this came out of a need after the fact, but they were really proactive in realizing that, like, actually this flooding risk is across our city and we need to do something about it on our sites. So if you guys want to start this work with your districts, we've put together this like 6-page or so briefing. It looks at, what are the types of risks you might be looking at. Here are some strategies to think about related to those risks. Lots of like linked resources if you want more on a specific type of climate risk. And then sort of a reminder of those different sort of integrated planning aspects that you might bring into your district's planning. So this is my information, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Anisa.